Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you'll learn to master the business of yoga. MBOM is a proud part of the Wander Barn Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Amanda Kingsmith. I'm a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, a yoga business coach, and a total business geek. Here at MBOM, you'll learn everything you need to know to create a sustainable yoga business by learning from myself and guests from around the world about how they built their yoga businesses, and about how you too can become a successful yoga teacher, studio owner, and much more. All right, let's dive in. Welcome to the podcast today, Andrea. I'm really excited to have you here with me today.
Thanks, Amanda, for having me.
Yeah, and where are you joining me from?
I am joining from Carmel, Indiana, which is a suburb just north. It abuts Indianapolis. So I am in the flat lands of America. It is very flat here.
Okay.
But it's sunny. It's sunny today. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, sunny is great, especially with springtime at the time of recording. So
yes.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And I'm curious, we have so much good stuff to dive into, but can you start by just telling me a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do?
Sure. So I help female entrepreneurs really create systems and have the right mindset that's going to give them the freedom they want in their businesses. So I think anyone who starts a business or who's thinking about starting a business, there's a little sentence in their head that says something like, oh, it will give me so much flexibility. If I work for myself, it'll give me so much flexibility. But then as they get into it, they realize, either I'm not going to be able to create the flexibility or freedom I want if I want this business to go the direction or have the success I want it to have, or they give themselves too much freedom in a sense and then feel like a failure. So something's going to change there. And I really help them, I say, create their secret sauce for success, which has just those two ingredients. Really, it's the right mindset and the right systems.
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. And I can definitely relate to what you were speaking about. I feel like I was very, had a corporate job and then kind of took what I call a career U-turn to just figure out what I wanted to do next. And I worked in retail at that point and started working at a yoga studio, got my yoga teacher training, et cetera, et cetera. And then as I started building my business, I was starting to rebel by like, I'm not going to work on like a Wednesday afternoon. But I feel like as I got busier and busier, it kind of trickled into like, hey, I'm kind of just working like 24/7 because I hadn't set up any, like structures, boundaries, systems, any of this. And I was like, wait, I didn't like quit this like, pretty well paid, good benefits, full-time job where I worked like, 8:30 to 4:30, Monday to Friday. Nobody bothered me outside of those hours to like work 24 hours a day. It's like not what I want to be doing.
It's so true. And if you think about it, like I like to say there's our three most valuable resources, and sometimes I argue four, but our time. So they give the resource of time, resource of money, resource of brain power, and resource of other people or relationships. And they kind of correlate to the four things that we want freedom in too. We want time freedom. We want money freedom. We want to be able to think what we want to think about. And we also want to be with the people we want to be with. And for a lot of entrepreneurs, figuring out how to make that happen, to create those freedoms or how to spend their resources is really challenging.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like I definitely resonate with that. And I'm curious if you can share a little bit before we get into that a bit more. Can you share a little bit about like, how did you get into what you're doing now? Like, what's your kind of story with this?
Yeah. So the short version is that I worked for my background is in psychology and communication. I worked in advertising, like a big advertising agency in Manhattan for a while. I have a master's in speech language pathology. So I worked with people who had lost their ability to communicate. But when I had kids, I kind of like, all right, I can't work full time. I need to be part-time. And I need something that's flexible, going back to that flexibility piece. So I worked for a company that their business model was that they contracted out to independent contractors a line of clothing. It was a clothing company. So you got a line of clothing every season. It wasn't a party method. You actually had to have a storefront, but you had to bring in customers to sell this line of clothing to each season. And that's how you got paid. You kind of got paid on commission. So you were an entrepreneur. And I worked for them for about 10 years. And as my path with them went on, about year 4, they said to me, hey, we would really love you to start recruiting and hiring and training new sellers. So I took on that more of a corporate-y kind of role. And what happened through that was that I figured out what really motivated women to have businesses, to stay in business and to be successful. But I also figured out what really motivated me and what I loved and what I didn't love. And what I didn't love was when my thinking kind of got squashed, or I wasn't really allowed to put some of my big ideas into play. And I kind of, I'll call it like sucked it up for a while and kept working for them. But the joke was that if I had one more great idea that this corporate entity said, no, you can't introduce to these people that you're training, I was going to quit. So after a while, I had it, and my big ideas weren't being really adhered to or listened to. And eventually I quit. And I realized at that point, I should have quit a lot sooner, but I wasn't quitting because I was staying in this place of fear, like fear that I wasn't going to find something better. Okay. Or, I wasn't worthy of earning more. There was a lot of fear in my indecision. This fear in all my indecision was fear-based. And so once I finally did pull the trigger, I wanted to figure out what was next. And I dove into, with a coach, actually, what did I really love about that job? Like what was motivating? Why did I stay for 10 years? And what I really loved was helping other women succeed and helping them figure out how to integrate life and business. So my coaching practice now, I am a big proponent on coaching both life and business, because I think as women, they are so intertwined, and you really do sometimes have to think outside of the box or create some big thinking in order to make it work. Like we've got to be problem solvers. We've got to be bold and take chances. We've got to have big dreams, or else we stay small and kind of squashed. And that's kind of the path that, I worked for this company for 10 years, finally left, figured out why did I stay so long? And then that led me to grow this business that I have now, that I've had my own business for about 5 years. But really what I've been doing is I've been coaching people for about 15, because in that old role, even though they weren't calling me a coach, they were calling me a trainer, I was coaching. So yeah.
Hey, yoga teachers, we're just taking a quick break from the podcast to talk about Offering Tree. If you guys have been listening to the podcast over the last couple of years, then you know that Offering Tree is my go-to software for all things yoga business for yoga teachers and studio owners. Offering Tree is the perfect software if you have a yoga business where you have group classes that you're running, workshops, retreats, videos that you want to put into a library, courses, one-on-ones, and more. You can do everything from the same platform, which is one of the things that I really, really love about Offering Tree. Plus, you can do it with an affordable price and just one password, so you don't have to remember all the different logins and all the different payments that you're doing. And one of the things that I also really like about Offering Tree is that they're constantly making updates. So just over the last couple of months that we haven't been recording new episodes, they have had so many updates and cool features that have been releasing. So I'm going to be telling you more about those over the next couple of weeks as we dive into this new season of MBO. But if you're looking for a platform that is functional, easy to use, that can get everything in your yoga business into one place, then Offering Tree might be it for you. To get started today, head on over to offeringtree.com/MBO. You can sign up for your free trial there and also get a discount that Offering Tree generously offers listeners of the podcast. Once again, it's offeringtree.com/MBO. All right, now back to the episode. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Thanks so much for sharing that. That's awesome. And I feel like I have so many questions and places we could go with that. But I just wanted to comment on Yeah, I feel like just as a woman myself, I feel like I've gone through various different phases of, I guess, just trying to figure this out. And I feel like there's the piece of like, I guess being like going through your like cyclical phases each month where it's like, hey, you know, my energy is not the same each month. How do I work in this kind of like masculine like structure that we've kind of created in the world when there's times of the month where like I feel more energetic, less energetic. So trying to flow with that, I feel like is one piece. And then I feel like stepping into motherhood has been like a whole other ball game for me in terms of like really resonate with what you said, where it's like, hey, it's not that I can't work full time. It's just that I want to be present for my daughter as well. Right. So figuring out how to have the balance of like, there's things I want to do for myself and my career and my business, but I also want to be present with her, especially while she's little, and trying to figure that out. And, you know, all that is so hard. And then I think you can also add in other pieces of like, some women have the responsibilities of like taking care of their houses on top of trying to like achieve their dreams. And it's like, how do we balance all of that? Because I feel like that can be super hard. And I'm sure there's many like yoga teachers out there listening who are juggling, trying to create class schedules while doing school pickup, while getting dinner started and bedtime done before they head out for like another class. And it's hard because you're doing these things for you, right? But then it's like you've also have these other responsibilities. And I feel like that's just can be really overwhelming and hard to juggle.
It can be. I mean, you're 100% right. And I think there's a couple things, I'll call them like guideposts that I think are really helpful. And when I'm working with women, I'm always thinking about these 4 things. And I think if we can think about these 4 things on a more consistent basis, we're better off. Number 1 is that, first of all, you just have to do, like, whether you want to call it this is the season of life you're in, or this period of life, or this chapter, things do change, right? So your 14-month-old is only going to be 14 months for one month, right? So it's going to look a lot different next month or even in 2 years. So, but you have to kind of get rid of the attitude of when this happens, then everything's going to be better, right? So when they're older, it will be easier. Yeah, some things will be easier, but maybe some things will be harder, all right? So I don't think that thought of when this happens is helpful. It doesn't really serve us. Okay. So what we really do have to kind of more sink into is clarity. Let's get some clarity around what I want this to look like right now. Like today, this week, this month. I always think a really good amount of time to think about actually is this quarter. Like in these next 90 days, what do I want this to look like? What do I want to accomplish? Who do I want to be in those 90 days? How do I want to show up? So you've got to get some clarity around what you want and who you are in a specific period of time. That's the first thing. Number 2 is confidence. Okay, so confidence can look like 100 different things. But one of my ways to think about confidence is I want you to all think about that little voice in the back of your head that tells you things that it thinks are very helpful. For example, do you really think that you can get dinner on the table, be present with your kids, and go to the yoga class by 7 p.m.? Who are you? Are you crazy? Okay, there's like that little voice back there that's trying to remind us that we're not superwomen, okay? Or that's trying to remind us that we really don't know what we're doing, or that's trying to remind us that this is going to be really hard. So we've got to develop the confidence or the ability to say to that little voice back there, thanks so much for the advice. So glad you reminded me. However, like I'm going to do this. So like, will the real Amanda please stand up? The real Amanda knows that, yes, she can actually get dinner on the table, be present with her kids, and leave at 7 o'clock. It's all just a matter of how she wants to think about it, right? So quieting that little frenemy voice back there and doing what you know that you want and are capable of doing is confidence in a way. So there's the second piece is confidence. Third, we've got to figure out how to manage time. And we could, there's a podcast on time management, right? But I like to say how you manage your time is a complete reflection of how you're managing your mind. Okay. So if you go back to when you said, hey, in the beginning, you're like, I'm not doing any classes on Wednesdays. All right. But then once you got into it, you're like, oh my God, I'm doing class every week, every day, 24 hours a day. What happened? Okay. So how you're managing your mind in those two different scenarios, you're managing your mind in a different way when you said no to Wednesdays than you are when you are going to classes every day. How you manage your time is totally a reflection of how you manage your mind. So we've got to get really good at mind management in order to manage your time and to feel like you have enough time for all the things you want to be doing. And then the last piece is, I like to say, turning obstacles into opportunities. So life is filled with obstacles, like big obstacles. You could say COVID was an obstacle, okay, like a big obstacle. You could say having a sick kid is an obstacle. You could say having a teacher that doesn't show up is an obstacle. But how can I flip the script and think of this as an opportunity? Like COVID became an opportunity for us to figure out how to actually make the world a bigger place and communicate online, virtually a lot. Like you and I might not have been doing this if that hadn't happened, right? So, but little obstacles like a sick kid, we get really frustrated with that, or just try to get ourselves together in order to handle it. But maybe it's just an opportunity for you to slow down for a day, right? Or the teacher that doesn't show up, maybe that's an opportunity to evaluate, do I need more teachers on my sub list? Do I want to be offering all these classes? I don't know. But how can these obstacles be opportunities? So clarity, confidence, managing your mind so you can manage your time, and turning obstacles into opportunities are all things that I really focus in on as I coach women through their business and their life.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing those. I feel like I can resonate with those a lot. And I feel like even before we hit record, we were talking kind of about the first one where you told me, oh, I'm going to yoga this afternoon. And I said, oh, I haven't been to an in-person yoga class in forever, because I'm just in this chapter of life where, I just don't really have the opportunities that much to go to in-person yoga. It's a little bit challenging. I don't have that much childcare. I'm working, I have a husband that works full time. So, going to in-person yoga I could certainly go in the evenings at like 8 p.m., but being straight up, it's like, I don't feel like leaving the house at 8 p.m. after
Right. I don't blame you. Neither do I. And it's like, you can just, okay, I don't go to in-person yoga anymore, and that's okay. If you add that phrase, and that's okay, onto just about anything, it neutralizes all of the emotion in it. Because you could get really charged up and mad at yourself. Like, if I really got my act together, I could go. What's my problem? Do I miss it? Do I want to go? Well, okay. Or you could just be, or sad. You could be sad about it. Hey, I'm doing all my yoga online, and that's okay. It's totally working right now. It's good.
Yeah. And that's the mind management piece that you brought into that, right? Because it's like we just like we kind of drive ourselves crazy, right, in our heads. Because it's like, yeah, I could easily be like judging myself or getting upset or trying to force it, versus just being like in this chapter of life. Like in-person yoga just doesn't really work that well for me. We're just doing our best.
Right. It doesn't work. And that's okay. I want you all to remember that little phrase, and that's okay, because it makes things a whole lot more manageable. And really, it is okay. You're not just trying to convince yourself into something. It is okay.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that's important, like giving ourselves that forgiveness, that freedom. If we don't want to do something or we're not doing something, it's like, it's okay. And that can apply to life and business and all those types of things. And this kind of brings me to the next thing I wanted to talk about, because one of the things that I feel like I kind of got into this when I first started working was like, oh, I need to be, hustling. Like I need to hustle to make money. I need to hustle to get clients. I need to hustle to get classes, like hustle, 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 hustle. And I feel like over the last few years, so much of my work has been like unhustling per se, like kind of letting go of this, like, being busy, working constantly. And so I'm curious, what your thoughts are on that, and just how we can start shifting away from this like hustle mentality, hustle mindset that I feel like is kind of promoted in our world these days.
So I think what's important is to take what I call a strategic pause. Okay. So, and actually yoga instructors could probably be pretty good at this. They just have to, or teachers have to try to translate their yoga into their business. Okay. So with the strategic pause, a lot of times I'll work with someone like, for example, we'll do I call it a VIP day. Okay. So on a VIP day, we pause, right? And we spend a couple hours really looking at both their vision for themselves and their business, and then the actions that they're going to take in order to make that vision a reality. And you can't really do this on the fly. Okay. You've got to set aside some time to do it. Doing it yourself is actually possible. It's hard, but you can do it. Okay. So if you were doing this at home, I would say set aside a morning or an afternoon and think about, okay, where do I dream? Okay. So you have to have your magic wand with you, right? A little pixie dust. So you have to dream a little bit of, what do I want my life to look like in 10 years? Okay. What do I want my business to look like in 10 years? What do you think this thing is going to look like in 10 years? And give yourself permission to go that far out. So like, I'm sure you're like, I can't even think about, I got a baby here, people. I can't think about next month, let alone 10 years. But I think this is a key in actually eliminating the hustle. Okay. Because what you're really figuring out is, if I go to my future self 10 years from now, okay, and I ask her, so she's the one that's like has created this magical vision. She's done it. If I ask her that's already done it, hey, what do I need to do today? They are not, they're going to, that voice from the 10-year, the future, I call it like the future Amanda, that future Amanda will tell you what you should be focusing on today. Like, no, she's not going to say that, yes, you definitely need to have a clean kitchen and an empty dishwasher. Like, she's not going to say that. Okay. She's going to say it's way more important to go outside and get some sunshine. Okay. Something to that effect, right? So you've got to take the strategic pause. You've got to figure out what your, I call it 10-year vision is. Okay. You've got to also then say, all right, so if that's the 10-year vision, what does my 3-year target need to look like? And I walk my clients through a series of questions and exercises, and we come up with what the 3-year target is. Okay. So if I want to still be living in Mexico, I want to have 3 kids and 2 dogs, and I want to be owning a studio, but really only teaching 1 class a week. I'm totally making this up, by the way. I don't know what your vision is. Like, what do I need to do in the next 3 years? Okay. What's the target for the next 3 years? Now, this 10-year target and the 10-year vision and the 3-year target really have to align with what you value. So again, you've got to pause long enough to figure that out. Like, what is important to me? What are my values? What are my core values? What's my core focus? Who am I? Those kinds of questions. And again, I walk through like a whole series of questions with clients to figure this out. But once we've got that piece of it, the values, the focus, the 10-year vision, the 3-year target, we kind of have enough of a runway to be able to access that future self, so that future self can tell us what we need to do today or we don't need to do today. All right. So you kind of then shift into the action mode. Okay. Now, if we can access the future person, they're going to help us figure out, all right, what do I want to accomplish this year? What do I want to accomplish in the next 90 days? Okay. There's like your quarter there, that's where that plays into. And 9 times out of 10, it is not going to be hustle. That's not going to be a word that's going to come up as we think about what you want to do in the next year or 90 days. It's not going to be there. And it's going to be a much more realistic, hey, what's ahead of you in these next 90 days? Is someone traveling a lot? Are there holidays? Are you going to be low on teachers in your studio because everybody's going on spring break? Are you pregnant and you're going to have a baby? Like, what's happening, right? So knowing the kind of the facts around your next year or 90 days or today or tomorrow or next week, and having that future person, future you guiding you, you really eliminate a lot of that hustle. But this really takes you though, taking that strategic pause in order to figure this out.
Ready to supercharge your career and business success? Coach Pals is the ultimate networking platform tailored exclusively for wellness professionals like yourself. Coach Pals focuses on empowering connections that truly transform your path. Whether you're a dedicated yoga teacher or an ambitious yoga business owner, they've got you covered with innovative features designed just for you. Let's talk about Coach Pals professional profiles. They're not your typical resumes. They're dynamic showcases of your expertise, experience, and skills, enriched with your wellness passion, journey, and community impact. With testimonials and skill endorsements, your profile becomes a magnetic hub for partners and clients. Imagine having a central space that unites your professional identity, opening doors to limitless opportunities thanks to the power of effective networking. From dream job openings to fruitful partnerships and supportive communities, Coach Pals truly has it all. Use code MBOM, that's MBOM, to enjoy your first month free when subscribing to a professional monthly plan. Learn more about Coach Pals Pro membership benefits at coachpals.com/memberships. Once again, use code MBOM when you're signing up to get your first month free. All right, now back to the episode. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I love that because it's like, I feel like part of the hustle comes from kind of like being on the hamster wheel, right? We're just like going through the motions, doing things. And I feel like when we kind of pull out from that and look at like the bigger vision, like it's really easy to identify like, okay, what is serving me that I'm doing? What's not serving me? And I feel like every time I've done this, it's like so much of just like the day-to-day grind that I'm doing. I'm like, wait, why am I doing this? You know, can kind of come back to like, oh, am I in a season of life where I need to say yes to more things because I'm trying to save money or I'm trying to make more money or I need more money for whatever reason? Sure. Okay. That's valid. How long are we going to do this for before it doesn't serve me anymore type thing? But I do feel like when I think about, 10 years from now, 3 years from now, it does kind of put into perspective like, hey, that like hamster wheel day-to-day grind, like a lot of it's not that important, right? Like a lot of it's not that aligned with like the vision I have for my future self.
No, it's not. And that's in the moment, everything seems very important and urgent.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
So, but you've got to really think about it. Is it important? Is it urgent? And maybe here's another thing that we think about. I want you to kind of toss around in your head. Maybe it's not urgent. Okay. Like let's, a lot of times when we have like, hey, I really want to, whether it's a business project or I want to clean out all the closets kind of project. Okay. Whichever it is, I want to, start making more videos for TikTok, or I want to clean out all my closets. Both of those things aren't urgent. Like nothing's going to happen if you don't do it today.
Mm-hmm.
But they are important to you in a sense, because they might be feeding in some, bigger kind of goal. So how do you tackle those, or why do they just stay like lingering in our brains? The only way to get them out is to take those projects and break them into smaller parts. So I say anything that's on your to-do list that's been there for more than a week, even if it's your mental to-do list, you've got to assess and say, okay, is this something that I should be eliminating? Like how maybe it's a no for now, but not a no forever. But if it's not something that I should eliminate, should I delegate it? Or why am I not tackling it? And usually the reason you're not tackling it is because it's too big of a project. So eliminating hustle on a daily basis, you can get pretty granular and decide what's going to move the needle forward the most. What is it? Deciding I'm just going to do one closet a day, or deciding I'm going to spend just 30 minutes Googling how to do TikTok videos. Like, what is it? Okay. So that's going to move the needle forward than you endlessly scrolling or just continuing to wish your closet was cleaner.
Yes, 100%. It's great. I was thinking about the things that have been on my to-do list for a while.
Yeah, right. And there are things. Everybody has things.
Yeah, for sure. I also think, and I don't know if this relates also, but it kind of comes to mind of like, I can get really bad with having a number of tabs open. Like anytime my husband's on my computer,
oh yes,
he gets really alarmed by how many tabs I have. I actually don't think it's that many. It's like maybe 15. So that's probably like a medium amount of tabs. And in terms of like the whole, I've seen people with like hundreds open. So
I have a lot of tabs open.
Yeah.
I got about 15 open. I'm on your team.
Okay.
I like
Yeah.
I like it.
But I feel like sometimes for me at like the end of the week, I'll kind of go through my tabs and be like, okay, I've had this open for 2 weeks. Like, am I actually going to look at this? Like, is this important, or is this something that like I'll put on my to-do list for the future? Cause it's like just sitting there, right? It's just sitting there taking up space. And I feel like it's kind of the same thing with tasks. Like, I feel like if you want to clean the closets, put it on your calendar or like, let it go, cause it's just not that important. And I feel like it's the same thing with projects and other things. I guess one question I would have for you, because I do feel like sometimes when we are in this like kind of like rat race, daily grind, on the hamster wheel, however you want to say it, sometimes like making time for projects can be really hard. Do you have any tips for like if somebody's like, no, I actually do want to do this, I just don't know how to actually get it done?
Yeah. So, okay. So two things. I think it really comes down to decision making. Okay. Like if you really think of this relates to the skill of decision making, and decision making is a skill, no matter how we cut it. I have a podcast myself called Time to Level Up, and some of my most listened to episodes are on decision making. So if you want to know more about that, go check out Time to Level Up podcast. So you've got to realize that it's about decision making, but there are, it then comes, so you have to decide that this is an important thing that you want to focus on. So when we talk about finding time to do things in the terms of decision making, you've got to decide what are your areas of focus. Okay. So yes, this is something I want to focus on. That's step number one. Step number two is to figure out how to plan for it. So I think a lot of things that are sitting on our to-do list, why they're sitting there is that we don't have a plan. We just say like, okay, let's say you're like in a business sense, you really need to look at your numbers. Okay. So you say the word on your to-do list is budgeting. Okay. Or cash flow.
Yeah.
Okay. Those words, they're sitting there. First of all, they are scary. A lot of people are very scared of those. But second of all, it is not telling your brain what to do. It's just like a big topic. So is it look for unpaid bills? Is it determine how to create more revenue next month? Is it have a better system of invoicing? You've got to figure out like what really is, let's even get better at defining the project and what's the plan. And the plan usually is going to involve multiple steps. Okay. So if we just talk about money, for example, like what's the project? Is it better system for invoicing? Is it budgeting? Is it, I don't know, it just scares me altogether. Okay. So what's the project? And then make a plan. And the project probably should be divided into 10 steps. Okay. Okay. Now it comes to how do you actually find the time? Now, so there's focus, plan, and schedule. Now you really want to put this into the schedule. So you need to find, and I call them blocks of focus time on your calendar. I like to say every day you should have at least 2 90-minute blocks of focus time. If it's not a day where you're packed to back to back with classes or whatever, if this is a day where you don't have other obligations, we'll call it. Okay. It's truly hard obligations, appointments on your calendar, not things you made up in your head. Okay. So on those days, 2 blocks of focus time, 90 minutes, and you schedule in to do one of those 10 parts of the project. Okay. I'm a full focus planner certified pro. Okay. So we can put that in the show notes if we want to, but this thing called the full focus planner is a paper planner. And the system that it uses, I am 100% all in on. I think if we use a hybrid system of having this paper planner to really think through these projects, and then we have our digital calendar, online appointments, we got to use both together. But you can create a system where you're not missing things. Okay. So you don't feel like you're like, there's no tasks that are dropped. You're not procrastinating. You're not feeling like you never have enough time. Okay. If you can get this kind of thinking, this system down, you're going to be able to figure out what your areas of focus are, what needs a plan, and then how to schedule it. And in this type of thinking, I always say there should be a weekly big 3, like what are the things this week you definitely want to accomplish, the 3 top things. And then each day, what are the 3 things? And each of those should start with a verb. So it should be, it could be empty the dishwasher. Okay. It could be record the podcast.
Or like write a chapter of the book.
Write a chapter of the book. It has to be which part? Record chapter 2 or part 2 of the course. Okay. Not just course, because that's what we want to write.
Well, because then we sit down and it's like we have that decision fatigue, right? Like, what are you doing? And it can take, if you only have 90 minutes, it's like you could spend 35 of them just trying to figure out what you're actually going to work on.
Right. And these daily big three and weekly big three should be things that you have some resistance to. Okay. It's not going to be brush your teeth, hopefully. Right. It's not going to be, if you're someone also that practices yoga on a daily basis, like you always do 30 to 60 minutes of yoga, whatever it is, like that's not one of your daily big three because that's an automatic for you. Okay. So these weekly and daily big threes should be things that you have a little, I call it resistance to. Okay. So if putting away laundry, even though it's easy and doesn't really require too much brain power, if that's something that like you have resistance to and laundry is sitting in laundry baskets for days, that could be part of your daily big three. Okay. Along with writing part 2 of the course. Like that's okay. Because both of those things you have resistance to.
Right. And both need to get done. Both are taking up mental space, that type of thing.
So this is hard too. No one out there listening should be like, oh, I should be really much better at this. What's my problem? You know, sometimes I had someone yesterday say, I'm 32 years old. I should be better at this. You know, and I said to her, you're going to think this when you're 42, and when you're 52, when you're 60. So that's not serving us. That's not helpful. Okay. Just be real. Just be happy that you're recognizing that this is something you could work on. And if you're not making the progress you want to make on it, or you don't feel like you're getting better, or this continues to be hard, then it's okay. Like seek support, seek help. I mean, that's one of the ways to lessen the hustle because we spin our wheels trying to figure stuff out all the time. And if we just asked or got the support we needed, make it so much better.
Yeah. That's hitting home for me for sure. So thanks so much for sharing that. I feel like that's definitely helpful. I feel like those are some really good like strategies and tips. So hopefully listeners are feeling that also. And then one other thing I wanted to pick your brain about is any tips that you have for, shifting from like this overwhelm to freedom. Because I feel like one of the things, I know this is probably the thing I feel the most in my life and business is overwhelm. And I think there are a lot of people, like if you're juggling a lot of stuff outside of, your business, and then your business is also busy and you're working hard to build it up, make more money, et cetera, which I think most of us are doing. How do we kind of shift out of overwhelm so we do experience kind of like we started with that freedom, the freedom that we wanted, which is why we became entrepreneurs, right?
Right. Okay. So we're going to play a little game here. Okay. And you're going to be my game player. So I'm going to take you through it's a super quick. You can use this for any feeling that you're having. Okay. Or to create any result you want, or to solve any problem. There's really no situation in life that you can't, or business that you can't use this for. Okay. It's a something called the model. A woman named Brooke Castillo created this. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Some listeners might be familiar, but I think this is like brilliant. And I use it all the time with my clients. It's really my number one tool. So first piece of it is to look at the facts, okay, or the circumstances. So in a court of law, no one would argue about whatever the facts are or whatever the circumstances are. So you could say, I'm Amanda. I'm living in central Mexico. I think that's what you told me. I have a 14-month-old. I have a podcast. I have a business. Okay. Facts. So in a court of law, no one would argue. Like the day we're recording this at X time, no one's arguing. We're not saying things like, oh, she loves her business, or it's hard having a 14-month-old. Like those are all thoughts. They're not facts. Now, I would agree with you that it is hard having a 14-month-old. All right. But that's my thought and your thought. I share that thought with you, but it's not a fact, because some people might say 14 months is easy. Wait till 14 years. Okay.
Yes.
See what I mean? All right.
People have said that to me.
Right. Like you got nothing now, my friend. So remember, there's the circumstances, the facts. Now you have thoughts about all of those facts. Okay. So what is one thought that you have about all of those facts that triggers or causes you to feel overwhelmed?
I think the biggest thought is like, there's not enough hours in the day to do all the things I want to do.
Yes. Ding, ding, ding. I think all the listeners are thinking the same thing.
Like I don't have enough time, I think
Correct.
is the simple.
Okay. I don't have enough time. So when you're thinking, I don't have enough time, with about all those facts, right? It triggers or causes you to feel overwhelmed, right? Because you're human. Good. Check. We know you're human. When you're feeling overwhelmed, what what happens when you're feeling overwhelmed? What actions do you take? What actions don't you take? How do you react? What do you do or not do?
I guess there's two things that can happen. One is that I sit and I'm kind of paralyzed, so I do nothing. And the other one is I get into kind of like an anxious, I got to get everything done like during the baby's nap time or like late at night. So I'm kind of like this hunched over.
Minutes. Yes.
Yeah, this hunched over little like golem type, like, let me do my work, need to work really fast. And then, that's not a good vibe. So it's either paralysis or like stress mode.
Okay. Perfect. Ding, ding, ding. Amanda is so smart. She's got all the right answers. Okay. So let's go with paralyzed. All right. When you're paralyzed, which I would have used that same word. Sometimes I say stuck, but I like paralyzed even better. How do you show up in the world, or what gets done? Nothing. Right? Nothing really changes too much. Okay. And so there's the circumstances, your thoughts that trigger the feeling of overwhelm that cause you to take the no action route, paralyzed, which then trigger or cause the result of nothing changes or nothing gets done. And that result line is always evidence of the thought line. Okay. So the nothing gets done is definitely evidence or friends or cousins with the thought, I don't have enough time. Of course, if you don't have time, nothing's going to happen. Like you don't have enough time to get anything done. Okay. So if we want to change that result line to feeling like I have plenty of time, having time freedom, going back to your freedom question. So if we want the result of feeling like I have plenty of time, we've got to change this model because the circumstances aren't changing. Like last time I checked, nothing's really changing. Okay. Like it would be great if they could change, but we can't change it. So we've got to, in order to get a different result or to basically, if you have time freedom, for example, that means that you're doing everything you want to be doing and more. All right. To get there, we've got to change our thought so that we can create a feeling of confidence or commitment or being disciplined about how we're using our time or just being at peace with the situation. There's lots of feelings we could put in there, but I'm going to argue that if we want the result to be, I've got plenty of time to do everything I need, the action needs to be, I'll call it intentional actions. We've got to be a little more intentional with what we're actually doing and when. And in order to do that, we have to feel a sense of, I'm going to go with at peace with things. Okay. So your thought about all these circumstances could be, this is a lot and that's okay. I know exactly how to do this. I know exactly how to do this. I know exactly how to get exactly what I need. So if that's your thought, then how does that make you feel? If that's what you're saying to yourself?
Yeah. I mean, my brain was like, that's not true. I don't know anything. I have no idea what I'm doing.
All right. So this is what we have to practice this stuff.
Yeah.
Just like you practice
it's
yoga.
The mindset. It's the mindset.
This is the mindset, right?
Yeah.
We can create like lots of systems to help you get shit done. Okay. We can do that. Like we can totally do that. But this is the mindset piece why it's so important. Okay. But just like you have a practice of yoga and you get way better at it the more you do it, with my clients, why they're in coaching, a lot of it is just to have the opportunities to practice and get better at thinking some of these thoughts. Okay. Because some of them are hard to believe. Okay. It maybe saying, I know exactly what to do is going to one extreme and it's not believable yet. Okay. But what you could say is, this is a lot and that's okay. Like that one you could do today. This is a lot and that's okay. So if you say this is a lot and that's okay, how does that make you feel? Yeah. And does it feel kind of just like at peace with it? Neutral?
Yeah. It kind of takes that like weight off of me a little bit.
Yeah, like the edge off of it, right? So if you're like, okay, we're just going to go about my day. I'm going to do one thing, next thing, whatever. If someone cries, it's okay. You start to take some intentional actions and then you do what you want to do and you get better and better at it. So it's really what it really comes down to is your thinking, choosing thoughts. You have choices. Your thoughts are like on a tray, like a tray of hors d'oeuvres. The waiter's going around and saying, Amanda, Take one. Which hors d'oeuvre do you want? Or which thought do you want to take today? Do you want to take the thought that says there's not enough time? Or do you want to take the thought that like, this is a lot and that's okay? Or do you want to take the thought, I know exactly what I'm doing? Like you get choices. So you get to choose your thought.
Amazing. Yeah. Thanks for that. I love that. I feel like that's a super helpful tip to start shifting away from these feelings of overwhelm. So definitely impactful for me. And I hope it is for other people listening too. And I'm curious, through your career, you've done so much. Can you share, do you have like one business lesson that you could share with us?
Yeah, I think, I've learned two. I'm going to share two things. Okay. Number one is just a quick little phrase that really is helpful. Be curious, not critical. Okay. Be curious, not critical. Why am I feeling this way? Like what's going on versus being critical of yourself or others. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is I like to say that being an entrepreneur is really a journey in personal development disguised as an entrepreneurial adventure. So we're supposed to think this is super fun, right? Okay, it's an adventure. Okay, but really what it is a journey in you growing and developing as a person.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And if you can embrace that, then you're going to go way, way further. It's going to allow you to do some of this big thinking. I'm writing a book, and the title of the book, I actually just today saw some mock-ups for the cover, so I'm pretty excited about it. The title of the book is She Thinks Big: What to Do When the Problem is You.
I love it.
When the problem is you, if you start to think bigger and be a little more accepting and be curious about what's possible, you'll go way farther.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm curious, where can we find all the details about you? Where can we get your book when it comes out, listen to your podcast, all that type of stuff?
Well, the quickest and easiest summary of all those things is to go to the URL Andrea's with an S, links with an S. So AndreasLinks, AndreasLinks.com. You're going to find a link to my podcast, Time to Level Up. You can also find that on all your favorite podcast players right now. You can find a link to my website, which will definitely have info on the book and also ways to connect with me. I mean, I am always up for a chat. So if you want to just book a complimentary call and help, I like to say these complimentary calls should be worth millions of dollars, but I'm happy to do them to help you through whatever. AndreasLinks.com is probably the best place. And you can find me on social media. So like go right now to Instagram, Andrea.Liebross.coaching, or Facebook or LinkedIn, but I think Instagram is probably the best one.
Amazing. Thank you so much for everything you've shared today, Andrea. This conversation has been amazing and so helpful for me. So hopefully it is for listeners as well. And yeah, excited to follow along with you and keep learning from you.
Love it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. To find links, notes, resources, and everything mentioned in today and all episodes of the show, you can head on over to mbomeyoga.com. You can find the podcast and myself on Facebook and social media at Mastering the Business of Yoga. And I would love for you to join the private Facebook community, Yoga Business Badasses. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please make sure you reach out to me at info@mbomeyoga.com. And last of all, if you enjoyed this episode of the show, please make sure you hit subscribe and leave a review for the podcast. It would mean the world. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll see you next week. Namaste.